The March 18th, 2019 Troy City Council meeting. We are pleased this evening to have Reverend Danielle Lindstrom from the Beacon Unitarian Universalist Church with us this evening to lead us in the invocation. So please rise for that and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening.
I'm honored to be with you here this evening. I invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer and reflection. Spirit of life that we know and name in so many ways, as goddess, as God, as the universe itself, or perhaps as no more, yet no less than the collective force of human will and intention. We invite the presence and support of all that is greater than us as individuals alone. We start by acknowledging that the work of governing isn't easy. The work of decision-making and holding the whole above the self isn't simple. We ask that you bless those who are called to this work, to those that lead the community we call home. May you be blessed with challenging questions beyond how do we fix this? Questions like, what do we need to learn? How might we need to change? And to whom do we need to listen? May you listen with compassion and patience when it is time to listen, and answer with courage and wisdom when it is time to speak up, and may you know the difference. May you be mindful of your privilege and your power, and if the path forward becomes unclear, may you side with love, because love encompasses everything. May you take care of yourself as you care for this community. We are all in this together, this interconnected web of all existence, brought together by hope, held together by love. May it be so. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you. Troy City Council meeting is now called to order. The roll call, Ms. Stewart.
Mayor Slater.
Here.
Councilmember Abraham.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Here.
Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick. Councilmember Pennington.
Here. Thank you. Councilwoman Hoderick notified us this afternoon that she would be absent and out of the county, so I will move that the Troy City Council hereby excuses the absence of Councilwoman Hoderick at the regular City Council meeting of March 18th, 2019, and the special study session held at 6 o'clock March 18th, 2019, due to being out of the county. Support. Moved by the chair and supported by Mayor Pro Tem Baker that we excuse the absence of Councilwoman Hoderick at the regular City Council meeting of March 18th, 2019, and the special study session held at 6 o'clock p.m. March 18th, 2019, due to being out of the county. Discussion? The vote, Ms. Stewart?
Mayor Slater.
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington.
Yes.
Motion passes. First on the agenda are certificates of recognition and special presentations. There are none this evening. There are no carryover items or public hearings. I don't see that anyone has signed up for public comment on items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Therefore, there is no need for a city council or city administration response. There are no postponed items this evening, so we will move to regular business. I-1, board and committee appointments. There are no mayoral or city council appointments this evening. I-2A are mayoral nominations. I have two nominations that I would like to place this evening. I would like to nominate to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority for the terms that expire 4/30/2020 Rami Sweden and Carolina Norgruz Ortez.
Support.
Moved by the chair and supported by Councilman Henderson that we nominate to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority Rami Sweden, Carolina Norgruz Ortez for the term that expires 4/30/2020. Discussion? The vote, Ms. Stewart.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes. Motion passes, and thank you to those Troy residents that volunteered to be on that important committee. That concludes the mayoral nominations, so I would defer to Mayor Pro Tem Baker for City Council nominations.
Thank you, Mayor. To the Historic District Commission, I'd like to nominate W. Kent Voigt for the term expiring March 1st, 2022.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Baker and supported by Councilman Pennington that we nominate W. Kent Voigt to the Historic District Commission for the term that expires 3/1/2022. Discussion? The vote, Ms. Stewart?
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you to Mr. Voigt for volunteering for that position.
And then for the Zoning Board of Appeals, I'd like to nominate Michael Bossenbrook for the term expiring 4/30/2020, Aaron Green for the alternate seat for the term expiring 1/31/2021, and Thomas Desmond for the term expiring 4/30/21.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Baker and supported by Councilwoman Abraham that we nominate Michael Bossenbrook to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the term that expires 4/30/2020, Aaron Green as an alternate for the term that expires 1/31/2021, and Thomas Desmond for the term that expires 4/30/2021. Discussion? The vote, Ms. Stewart.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you to those residents that have signed up to volunteer for that important committee. That concludes the nominations.
Yes.
Next on the agenda, I3, there is no closed session request this evening. So I call on I4, the adoption of the 2019-2020 city strategies. City Manager Miller, did you want to make an introduction to
Yes,
that?
Mayor, Mayor, members of council, a quick intro is that we held on February 20th a strategy development session, and we took those raw strategies which were developed. We then met with the 4 group leaders, and we massaged those down to be more specific, and we shared that with the rest of our city team, and we provide that for you. So we're here. If you see any revisions that are necessary, let us know, and we will make those revisions. And thank you.
Thank you. Somebody like to move the resolution, get it on the table for discussion? Councilman Hamilton?
I'll move I4, adoption of the 2019-2020 city strategies. Resolved that Troy City Council hereby adopts the 2019 to 2020 strategies for the upcoming fiscal year as presented by city management.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Hamilton and supported by Councilwoman Abraham that we hereby adopt the 2019 to the 2020 strategies for the upcoming fiscal year as presented by the city manager and printed it in the agenda packet. Discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you, Mark, and everybody for revising these. I think they did a good job of putting together the spaghetti noodles we threw at the board. That's how I picture it. But Councilwoman Hoderick's not here, but last year she'd asked about, we added provide high-quality police services that reduce crime, collaborate with the community, and safely respond to critical incidents. it's not added here. I know it's something we do anyway. I just don't know if there's I kind of feel like, and now I do sound like Councilmember Hallereck, who's not here, but there's something always needs to be said about that. Thank you for turning up the volume, by the way. And I just don't know if it's what others think about doing something like that. Obviously, we care very much about our police and fire, and we make that a focus number one, as many other things. And from a strategy standpoint, I guess I hate to take that off once it's already on. And I don't know if we need to do anything about that or should do anything about that, but just my thought. I mean, yeah.
Thoughts, ideas? Councilman Pennington?
Mayor Pro Tem, are you referring to the traffic, increased traffic patrol?
No, just a statement that one of our strategies is always to be so focused with our police and fire and the collaborating with the community. I mean, like what we had last year. I think it's a good statement that always should maybe be part of our motto in another way, but I hate to take it off once it's already been on there. I don't want to say, oh, we did that in 2018, but we're done with it now. And obviously that's not what we're saying, but when you look at them and you compare them, you think, well, okay, why didn't it make it? Why was it there last year but not this year?
I think my recollection when we did the strategies this year was that we weren't going to put strategies that had been in previous years. They would continue from year to year. They're not eliminated, but once they're part of our strategies, they continue on. That was my interpretation of the decision-making that was made at the strategy meeting. Certainly we can change that, but there are other strategies that are still continuing to go on. So that was the thought process, I think, that went into it.
Then I agree with that. I think that's why. But I just want to say for the record, obviously, we still prioritize that in our city. That means a great deal to us to have good cooperation with the community and our police department. And we're always working hard to make sure that there's the right protection for our city and citizens, and it'll maintain a priority, right?
Good stuff. Yep, absolutely. Any other thoughts? That's an indication that you did a good job putting them together.
Thank you.
The vote, Ms. Stewart?
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Anyone wish to pull a consent agenda item this evening? Councilman Henderson.
I'd like to pull J4C for a quick discussion.
J4C. Anyone else wish to pull an item this evening? Councilman Henderson.
Move all items on the consent agenda with the exception of J4C.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Henderson, supported by Councilman Pennington, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as presented this evening with the exception of J4C, which will be considered after the vote. Further discussion? The vote, Ms. Stewart.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Motion passes. Councilman Henderson.
So J4C is the standard purchasing resolution 8, best value award, sale of real estate, southeast corner of South Boulevard and Adams Road, section 6, Old Stone School, and request to amend an agreement by and between Finn and Mary Bergeshagen and the city of Troy. The reason I want to pull this is just to have a discussion about that particular piece of property, and this can be directed at City Attorney Bloom. What we're voting here is just the amendment to add the language on the deed that we currently hold. Is that Or are we approving the actual sale at this point?
No, the proposed resolution is to actually approve the sale. As well as, there's a second component as well, and that is to amend the agreement. So you would need to do that in order to allow for a sale of the property. But the resolution as it is proposed, it does call for a sale with the condition that it is listed in the historic district. It is a historic district, and there are preservation criteria that will have to be satisfied, so it's not likely to be demolished, and also that it is listed on the state's historic registry as well. So those are some added protections against the remodeling of the building.
Okay. So the questions I have, and you've kind of addressed them here, the deed will explicitly require them not to do any destruction at all of that piece of property, or that structure that's on the building.
It will require them to comply with our historic district regulations, which again do limit what can be done, and it's very, very unusual for a total demolition to be allowed under our historic district registry.
Unusual or impossible is the question.
I'm never going to say that it's impossible, but it's very, very unlikely.
Okay. And the reason it's important is that if people out there don't realize, this building was built in the mid-1800s and was taken out of commission by as being a school in about 1933. So it is truly a historic structure. And we've had conversation, and those conversations have been answered in writing about, is it feasible for us to relocate that to the historic village property? And the type of structure, it's large stones, really big walls, almost impossible to move. It could be moved, but the cost to move it would be more than we'll take in from the sale of the property for sure. Again, my fear is that 5, 10, 15 years down the line, is it possible that this could be destroyed and taken out of our city, and just that historic value would be destroyed. And we've taken some homes out of the historic records in the past few years since I've been on council, but a lot of them have had things done to them that kind of take the historic value out of the properties. This one, when you go and look at it, it very much is a big piece of our history. So I want some assurances. I want to make some guarantees if we can, and I don't know how we can do that in writing, that structure will stay forever, or as long as we can possibly make it stay.
I think that you, again, in order to remove it as a historic district, council needs to make that determination. So that is something that is, a city council decision. It is, again, the language does specifically indicate that it is subject to the restrictions of a historic district, and doing any reservation, they have to get permission to do any improvements to it, and it has to be consistent with the historical nature. I don't know that we would ever recommend saying that it can never be taken out, because if there were a fire or something that destroyed a large portion of it, then it may be in the community's best interest to remove the structure. So I would caution against saying that it will never be removed. We have provided as much language in the agreement as we can to protect it to the greatest extent possible.
Okay. And I don't want to beat the dead horse, but maybe Mr. Miller can answer this. If that structure were not there, is that a buildable parcel or not necessarily?
Technically, it's buildable, but it's on such a small scale, there are great limitations, such as being able to provide a parking lot, sanitary sewers a long ways away, 1,000 feet away. The issue is that it's just infeasible for redevelopment.
Okay.
But technically, it could be used as a buildable parcel.
Okay. Then back to City Attorney Bloom. If, let's just say, 5 years from now, somebody decides, let's just bulldoze it and we don't catch it in time and it's gone, what are the ramifications of that situation?
It's possible that they could be required to restore it or to do at least a replica. So that is one of the opportunities that is allowed under our historic district, so if they destroy it. Also, the historic district ordinance does allow us to do regular checks and make sure that there is compliance. So there are greater enforcement powers under the Historic District Act.
Okay, and would that be on the city's shoulders to pursue that, or the state, or combination of?
The city will be the first line. The city will be the first one that would be approached. And again, there are, also it's a municipal civil infraction, so if we needed to, we could go to court to get some equitable relief as well.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. The agenda packet mentions that the temple, they've indicated they want to preserve it to showcase it at the 200th anniversary. Have they given any other indication as to why they want it? I mean, it's a minimal cost for the city to maintain it. If they can't build it, can they modify it to use it as somehow showcase the temple, but as long as the outside structure is the same?
I believe that there are representatives from the temple who are here, and they probably would be in a better position to answer that question than I am. But yes, I mean, in the interior, yes, there can be modifications made to the interior so that it can be, can accommodate their purposes. I believe that they're looking at doing a meditative center or something like that to complement the temple.
Okay.
Just to interject a little bit, I've had conversations with the leaders at the temple for a number of years about this piece of property, and I know in speaking to them that it's always been in their best interest to maintain that piece of property, but let's be honest, the city doesn't do the greatest job of keeping appearances up on this type of property, and I think you're going to find that they're going to do a much better job of making it look more presentable and something that is going to enhance the appearance of the temple. But I don't want to speak for them. I have had many conversations, and I do notice that there is representatives from the temple. One question before I ask them to come up. Do we need to waive the rules in order for them to come up and speak at this point in the agenda? If so, I'm happy to get consensus to allow them to come up.
Yeah, just as a precautionary measure, it's probably best to get a waiver of the rules.
Is there consensus? Okay, thank you. Would you want to come forward and answer a couple of questions? Thank you. I certainly don't want to speak for you, but I know we've had conversations in the past, but good evening.
Good evening. I'm Ravi Khatri. I'm the chair of Board of Trustees for the Bharati Temple. So any questions? Sure.
Well, a couple of questions. Could you just tell the council what the intent of the temple is to do with the property and what you intend to use it for?
Okay. Before I say that, I should first say that we are going to have the general body meeting coming Saturday. So obviously, whatever I say is subject to the approval by the general body. But Board of Trustees has discussed this extensively during last 1 month. And I thought it is in our best interest to have this property maintained appropriately so that it does not contradict the beautiful look of the temple. As you mentioned, we have been interested in this property for quite some time, and due to one reason or the other, we have not been able to basically procure it. But now that we had the opportunity, we have seriously considered that we would like to have the property. We will maintain it. As you said, and it's in the letter that I wrote, that I signed, that we would plan to showcase it during the next year, 2020, during the anniversary of the Auckland County. But obviously, it is all subject to our planning and subject to the approval for the sale from the general body meeting. But I can assure you, if it goes through, then you can be sure for next 60 years that we will maintain it.
And there's no intention to change the appearance of the building?
There's no intention to change the exterior of the building, as we have been told. And we are fully aware that that's kind of our moral obligation. So we will obviously keep our words. For the interior, we do not know. We obviously have to plan. I must also add that we are going to buy this property, but obviously renovation, rather restoration, is expensive. So if you are expecting that we will basically do all the restoration immediately, it's not going to happen. We are a temple, non-profit organization. Things move slowly by the approval of general body and board and other committees. So it is going to take time. But given that we have not seen any changes in the property and it has been deteriorating for the last 10 years, that has been our concern, and obviously so we like to have the property in a better shape.
Thank you. Any specific questions from council? For some of us that have been inside of this building, it could use some tender loving care, for sure. Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you. Thank you for coming up on the spot, too.
You're welcome.
You have a general body meeting this coming up Saturday?
We have general body coming Saturday, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And actually, you are welcome to come. And actually, in some way, it might be helpful if one of you comes and answers the question for general body. So I invite one of you to come if you want to represent city.
Will this project be discussed at that meeting?
This is the main item in the agenda. Other two minor items about budget approval, etc. But this is the item we are going to discuss.
Do you think that you'll have more of a finite plan after that meeting, that maybe if we push this off until our next meeting to hear
Probably no.
Specificity?
Probably no, because obviously after the general body meeting, and assuming that you conclude the decision in favor of us, we will take some time to discuss this in our board.
Okay.
And it has to be approved, money has to be obviously arranged. So it's going to take some time. So we will not be ready to give any plans, I can say, for at least next 3-4 months.
Right. And you're not going to move forward with the plans if we don't approve the sale of the property to you. I get it.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming up, and I appreciate your commitment for 60 years. So.
Thank you. Welcome. Any other questions?
Councilman Henderson.
Regarding the maintenance, the city was kind enough to give me a little bit of a snapshot, all of us on council, a snapshot of what it costs us a year to just mow the lawn and keep the weeds down. And that's between about $2,300 and $3,000 a year. And your anticipation is to make it nicer in appearance, because it's a corner of the city of Troy. So people understand that as a landmark. It's not a real heavily trafficked area, but certainly as your temple is a really nice indication of what they're coming into.
Yeah, thank you. Well, if it is our property, it is our property. So we maintain it as our property. So obviously, it's in our interest to have it beautified. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Henderson, would you like to move the resolution for any further discussion?
I'd like to move J4C.
A, B, and C?
Just
C?
the C? Just C, as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Henderson, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Baker, that we approve J4C as printed in the agenda packet this evening. Any further discussion? The vote, Ms. Stewart.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. I know you'll take great care of that. Next on the agenda are memorandums and future council agenda items. There are none submitted this evening. Next is public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses, and I will call upon Thomas Bakula, Troy resident, who wishes to speak this evening. Yes. Good evening.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I have this issue, and you put it in your package. I put something in the package for both everyone in the council and the planning commission. And basically, there's a photograph there, and across the street from my front door, there are 5 cars parked across. 3 of them are on the lawn. And the planning department and zoning department said there's nothing against the ordinance for that. I talked to city manager's staff, and they kind of just suggested that I work through the planning commission and the city council. And I was at the planning commission meeting last week, and Brent, I was trying to pull up the meetings, but I didn't realize that they got to get the meetings approved before they're published. But Brent, the planning commissioner, basically said that responsibility should fall, or the way to solve it would be to get an ordinance that bans parking cars on lawns. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Brent suggested that the way to solve the problem is to get an ordinance to ban the parking on lawns. And I just basically coming to you guys to try and get your buy-in on it and see what we can do to move forward on it. So that's all I have.
Thank you. This is an opportunity for you to have some conversation with us, and then at some point when we're done with public comment, council will have a conversation regarding your discussion.
One of the things I was going to ask was, what time frame do we look on? I'm not that familiar with the protocol. I'm not that familiar with the protocol of the situation, but as I mentioned, I'm planning to market my house, and it's kind of difficult if someone comes over and sees 3 cars parked on the lawn across the street.
I understand what you're saying. This isn't an opportunity for us to have a conversation, but I understand your issue, and we're going to be discussing this very quickly.
Okay.
Okay?
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank the city manager for his help earlier when I was moving on this. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That concludes those that have signed up for public comment on items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses, and this is an opportunity for council and city administration for response. Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, sir, for coming up and giving us the picture. That helps. My initial thought is, Troy's got a big, diverse layout of housing developments. Some are subdivisions, some are less formal structures. I know that in my neighborhood, my homeowners association wouldn't allow this. You can't talk back is the problem. So, but I'm just like food for thought, I guess. And perhaps you've already gone that avenue. And but my hunch might be that it would be quicker and easier to have the HOA do something about this than it would be for us to have an ordinance come through and take care of something like that. Because it looks like from the picture there is an HOA. It looks like that kind of development in the city. So if that's an avenue that's been fully, you can't come back up. You can't come back up. But no, sorry. We can talk after if you like.
Yeah, we can talk to you after the council.
But other than that, I don't really know. Frankly, I'm not familiar with the ordinance regarding parking. I know that some people who live in less defined subdivisions or neighborhoods, parking on the lawn and on the grass is more common because there's not a lot of space in other places. So it'd be difficult, I think, to craft an ordinance that spoke directly to this type of instance. That's why I suggested an HOA, because it's very localized that way. But.
Councilman Hamilton.
Just to city staff, do other municipalities, is this a normal ordinance to ban this kind of thing? Does this happen frequently? Or is it mostly handled by HOAs? Or are you aware of?
Mayor, this is brought to your attention before we do a lot of work on it. We
Right.
want to make sure that there's consensus to proceed. So I have not done any research on it at all.
Okay.
I can't speak for the city manager.
I can tell you from my experience that it is common to prohibit it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Henderson.
In this particular picture, and I'd have to scramble to try to find it, but it appears that you got 2 cars parked in the very front, and then, thank you, and then 2 cars parked on the side, probably so they don't cross over the sidewalk. I would assume that, right? So the other option, without an ordinance change, would be for them to park those 2 vehicles in the street. Is there anything in our ordinance that prohibits parking on the lawn or I mean, if they parked over the sidewalk, they get tickets.
No,
I would assume.
it is not, it is legal to park on your lawn.
Okay. So we would have to enact an ordinance that would prohibit people from parking on something other than the
Yes,
driveway too.
but the ordinance probably be more prescriptive in saying where you could park, such as a driveway area in a certain location on your lot.
Okay. And we couldn't make one specific to a subdivision with sidewalks versus a subdivision with blacktop roads. So the complications of that would be a high level of...
Well, you can prepare ordinances that deal with, first they have to apply evenly on all properties. However, different circumstances could have different rules. So we'd have to really look into it at this point.
I'm going to assume that Mr. Bakula has exhausted certain avenues that have brought him to this council, and I'm going to assume that he's exhausted communication with the neighbor, and he's exhausted homeowners association potential. But I will tell Mr. Bakula that there's no way that this could be a fast track. This would take, if we decided to change an ordinance, it would have to be published in the paper. We would have to have a public hearing, and you're talking about months that this could be. So if the question is, can we fast track it, City Attorney Bloom, would you agree with me that that's very tough to do?
Well, first of all, I think that there are some issues that we'd have to deal with, first of all, because there are different situations that have, a couple of them have been brought up tonight. So we'd have to really research other communities, what they're doing. If you're doing it as part of the zoning ordinance, then yes, absolutely, you have to go to the Planning Commission first. And so there's a public hearing process for that, and then it comes to council after that, and there are first readings and second readings. So that will take a longer time. If it may be possible to do as a police power ordinance, we'd have to, again, research that to see. That's a little faster because you don't have to go through the Planning Commission, but in all likelihood, it still is going to be taking at least, we're talking months at least.
Government does not move quickly. Sometimes there's a good reason for that, because I'm not opposed to getting a report from the city attorney regarding taking a look at this issue, because quite frankly, I wouldn't want that across the street from me. And if you have exhausted communication with the neighbor, and I have some sympathy for somebody that is not going to be neighborly. So if there's consensus from the table, I wouldn't mind having the city attorney and city manager just give us a report regarding possibilities and what other communities might be doing regarding this issue. So, Councilman Pennington.
Mayor, I do have one suggestion that just came to my mind. Was one thing we could do quickly is vehicle, they all look to be plated, and I'm sure they're up to date, but except for vehicle number 3 that is backed in. If that car, and we could have a zoning, official, have somebody just check to make sure that vehicle's a plated vehicle, and if not, they would have to move that one, and so that would, clean up 30% of the eyesore. Because if they back that in for some reason, I've got an idea that that vehicle's been sitting there a while and it may not be plated legally. So if that's the case, we could have somebody check on that and possibly get rid of, one of them.
My apologies to Mr. Paluca, but we have rules that we have to abide by. We'll be happy to have conversation with you afterwards, but I think the best we can do tonight is to ask the city administration to get us a report what options we might have that could expedite this issue and what may take long-term issues. Is there consensus?
Yep.
Thank you, and we'll be happy to meet with you after, if needed. There aren't any council referrals this evening, so we will move to council comments. Any comments from council this evening? Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Just want to say it's nice to see so many high school students here. And since you're getting a short meeting, I thought I'd talk for a couple hours just to keep you here. And if you need us to sign those, we can all sign. So don't line up with just the mayor. You'll be here all night. So that's all. Thank you.
Councilman Henderson.
Just like to say goodbye to Ara Tapuzzi, the chamber president, whose last day I think was Friday, but they sent him off tonight with a nice dinner, and he's served the community very well. So we appreciate his service to the city.
Absolutely. He'll be missed. No question. Any council comments? Any comments regarding the reports in the agenda packet this evening? I don't see that anyone has signed up for comments on items on or not on the agenda from members of the public outside of Troy. There is no closed session request this evening, so thank you for coming this evening. We are adjourned.